Have you ever been sitting in a crowded room, maybe a loud party or a busy office meeting, and while everyone else is fighting to be the loudest voice in the room, you find yourself doing something completely different? You're just sitting back, watching. It's almost like you've stepped out of your own body and you're watching a movie unfold right in front of you. You see the nervous twitch in someone's hand when they're lying. You catch the quick glance two people exchange across a table that screams, "We need to talk later." You notice who's dominating the conversation and who is desperately trying to shrink into the wallpaper. While everyone else is busy broadcasting their thoughts, you're busy collecting data. It's a strange position to be in, isn't it? Sometimes people mistake your silence for shyness. They think you have nothing to say. They might even ask you, "Why are you so quiet?" implying that something is wrong. But here's the secret that the loud talkers often miss. Silence is not always empty. Sometimes silence is the loudest thing in the room, and the people who observe more than they speak are usually the ones holding all the cards. They're not disengaged, they're hyper engaged, just on a frequency that most people cannot hear. Maybe this is you. Maybe you've been called mysterious or intense or just blown quiet your whole life. Or maybe you know someone like this, someone who makes you feel like they're seeing right through you. It can be unnerving, but it's also fascinating. Today, we're going to peel back the layers of the silent observer. We're going to look at the psychology behind why some people choose to watch rather than perform. Because trust me, it's a choice, and usually a very smart one. We're going to explore the different types of silent observers because not all silence is created equal. First, let's talk about the analytical processor. This is the person who treats every social interaction like a complex puzzle that needs to be solved. Imagine you're in a high-stakes brainstorming session at work. Ideas are flying everywhere. People are interrupting each other, getting passionate, maybe even a little aggressive. There's a lot of noise, but not a lot of clarity. Then there's the analytical processor sitting at the end of the table. They haven't said a word for 20 minutes. They're just looking from person to person, their eyes slightly narrowed, not in judgment, but in deep focus. Inside their head, it's like a supercomputer is running a simulation. They're taking in every suggestion, weighing the pros and the cons, cross-referencing it with past data, and predicting potential outcomes. They're not quiet because they're afraid to speak. They're quiet because they don't want to waste words on half-baked thoughts. They operate on a quality over quantity basis. They believe that speaking before you have the full picture is not just inefficient, it's reckless. When this person finally does speak, the room usually goes quiet. Why? Because everyone knows that if they're opening their mouth, it's going to be something worth hearing. They cut through the noise with surgical precision. The psychology here is rooted in a deep need for accuracy and competence. For the analytical processor, being wrong is painful, not just because of ego, but because it represents a failure of their internal system. They observe because they need to be sure. They need to build a complete mental model of the situation before they intervene. It's a form of intellectual perfectionism. They're the architects of conversation, building solid structures while everyone else is just throwing bricks. Now let's shift gears to a completely different kind of observer, the emotional sponge or the empathic observer. This type of silence feels very different. If the analytical processor is a computer, the emotional sponge is a finely tuned antenna. This is the person you bring to a party who can instantly tell you that the couple in the corner is about to break up or that the host is secretly stressed out of their mind even though they're smiling and handing out drinks. For the empathic observer, the world is an incredibly loud place, not just with sounds, but with feelings. They pick up on micro-expressions, changes in tone of voice, and shifts in body language that most people completely ignore. When they're quiet, it's often because they're overwhelmed. They're processing not just the conversation, but the emotional undercurrents of the room. Imagine trying to hold a conversation while three different radios are playing different songs at full volume. That's what it feels like for them. Their silence is a form of self-preservation. If they engage with every emotion they felt, they would burn out in an hour. So they observe, they watch how people interact, trying to navigate the emotional minefield safely. But there's also a beautiful side to this. This is the friend you text out of the blue, asking if you're okay right when you needed it most. They notice the slight drop in your energy that no one else saw. They listen to what you don't say as much as what you do say. Psychologically, this stems from high sensitivity. These individuals have a nervous system that's more reactive to external stimuli. Observing gives them a buffer. It allows them to participate without getting swept away by the tide. It's a defense mechanism, but it's also a superpower. It allows for deep connection, but it requires a lot of solitary recharge time. If you're this type, you know exactly what I mean by the need to decompress after a social event. You're not just tired, you're emotionally full. Then there's the strategist, the power player. This is the silence that feels heavy, the silence that makes other people nervous. You've probably met someone like this, maybe a boss or a very confident negotiator. They walk into a room and they don't feel the need to fill the silence. They let the silence sit there, stretching out until it becomes uncomfortable for everyone else except them. The strategist knows a fundamental truth about human nature. People hate silence. Most of us are conditioned to fill awkward pauses with chatter. We babble, we overshare, we reveal things we didn't mean to reveal just to make the noise come back. The strategist uses this against you. They'll ask a question and then just wait. They'll look you in the eye and say nothing. The urge to explain yourself, to justify your actions, or to offer more information becomes overwhelming. This is not necessarily malicious, it's about control. In any interaction, the person who reacts less holds the power. The one who's scrambling to fill the air is the one seeking validation or approval. The one who's watching is the one granting it. By watching more than they speak, the strategist gathers intel. They let you show your hand before they even pick up their cards. They learn your motivations, your insecurities, and your desires while remaining a blank slate. The psychology here is often linked to a high degree of self-control, and sometimes traits associated with Machiavellianism, which is the ability to use social situations to one's advantage. But it can also just be confidence. True confidence doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to prove it's the smartest person in the room. It's comfortable waiting. It's the lion watching the herd, patient and calculating. But not all silence is about power or intelligence. Sometimes it's about fear. Let's talk about the anxious overthinker. This is the observer who desperately wants to speak but feels physically unable to break the barrier. For this person, the observation is not a choice, it's a cage. Imagine being at a dinner with friends. You have a funny joke to tell or a great story that relates perfectly to the topic. You rehearse the sentence in your head. You wait for the perfect gap in the conversation. You take a breath to speak, but then someone else jumps in. The moment passes, you swallow the words, and the cycle starts all over again. The anxious overthinker observes because they're terrified of judgment. They're constantly scanning the room for threats. Is that person bored? Is my story stupid? Did I laugh too loud? They're hyper-aware of social hierarchies and unwritten rules. They're watching to see how everyone else behaves so they can mimic it and stay safe. They're the chameleons, blending into the background, not because they want to disappear, but because they're afraid of standing out. Inside their mind is a constant commentary, critiquing everything, a running script of what they should have said 10 minutes ago. Their observation is defense-oriented, scanning for rejection. The tragedy here is that these people often have the most incredible inner worlds. They're creative, thoughtful, and funny, but the filter between their brain and their mouth is so thick that almost nothing gets through. If you're this type, you know the frustration of going home and having all the perfect conversations in your head when it's too late. Finally, there's the contented introvert. This is the most peaceful form of observation. This is the person sitting on a park bench just watching the leaves fall or watching people walk their dogs. There's no anxiety, no calculation, no emotional overwhelm, just presence. We live in a culture that equates silence with boredom or sadness. We think if you're not talking, you must be unhappy. But the contented introvert knows that life is often best enjoyed in the quiet moments. They observe because they find the world genuinely interesting. They don't feel the need to insert themselves into every narrative. They're happy to be the audience. They notice the way the light hits the building, the weird way a stranger walks, the funny sound the car engine makes. They find joy in the details. For them, conversation is an energy exchange, and they're careful about where they spend that currency. Psychologically, this comes from a high level of self-sufficiency. They don't rely on external validation to feel good about themselves. They don't need to hear their own voice to know they exist. They're comfortable in their own skin. This type of observation is a form of mindfulness. It's being fully present in the moment without the need to control it or narrate it. It's a rare and beautiful state of being in a world that's constantly demanding our attention. So, we have the analytical processor, the emotional sponge, the strategist, the anxious overthinker, and the contented introvert. It's quite a spectrum, isn't it? You might find that you identify with one of these strongly, or maybe you shift between them depending on the situation. You might be the strategist at work, but the contented introvert at home. You might be the emotional sponge with your family, but the anxious overthinker on a first date. Human behavior is fluid, and we all wear different masks. But there's a common thread that ties all these observers together. They all understand that there's more to communication than just words. They understand that information is everywhere if you're just willing to stop broadcasting and start receiving. In a world that's obsessed with personal branding and shouting opinions into the void, the observer has a unique advantage. They see the things that others miss. They hear the things that aren't said. They understand the context, not just the content. There's a certain dignity in being the one who watches. It shows a level of restraint and depth. Think about the people you respect the most. Do they talk just to hear themselves talk? Probably not. They speak when they have something to say, and when they are not speaking, they are paying attention. Paying attention is perhaps the greatest compliment you can give to the world and the people in it. It says, I see you, I hear you, I am trying to understand you. If you're a talker listening to this, maybe try a little experiment next time you're in a group. Resist the urge to fill the silence. Just for a few minutes, step back and watch. See what happens when you let the room breathe. You might be surprised by what you notice. You might see the dynamics shift. You might learn something new about a friend. You might even learn something new about yourself. And if you're an observer, if you're the one usually on the sidelines, do not let anyone tell you that you're passive or disengaged. You're doing the hard work of processing, feeling, and understanding. You're the keeper of the secrets, the reader of the room, and the calm in the storm. Your silence is not a weakness. It is a different language entirely, and it's one that speaks volumes if people are willing to listen. It's funny how we spend so much time teaching children how to speak, how to present, how to articulate, but we rarely teach them how to watch. We treat listening as the passive half of a conversation, something you do while you're waiting for your turn to talk. But real observation is active. It requires energy, focus, and empathy. It's a skill that can be honed and sharpened. So the next time you find yourself in that crowded room, feeling a little out of place because you're not joining the shouting match, take a deep breath. Look around. Embrace your role. You are the director watching the scene play out. You are the scientist gathering data. You are the poet noticing the details. You are the observer. And in a noisy world, that's a very powerful thing to be. Which one of these resonates with you? Are you the exhausted empath, absorbing everyone's feelings? Or are you the strategist, waiting for the right moment to strike? Or maybe you're the anxious overthinker, wishing you could just say what's on your mind. I would love to hear your perspective on this because I have a feeling you have noticed some things that the rest of us have missed. It's fascinating to think about how much life happens in the silent moments between words. The glance, the pause, the hesitation. That's where the real truth often hides, and you're the one equipped to find it. So keep watching, keep listening, and never underestimate the power of your own silence, because while everyone else is busy making noise, you're the one making sense of it all.